On September 10th, 1933, 3 drivers died at Monza in a single afternoon because of oil that nobody cleaned up, and because after the first 2 died, the officials swept more sand over the blood and continued the race. What happened next is not the story of a circuit whose dangers were unknown. The drivers knew the risks. Engineers understood the circuit's weaknesses again and again. People inside the sport warned that something had to change. What happened next is the story of a sport that looked at a circuit killing its greatest drivers and decided year after year that the race was worth more than the people racing it. In this video, we go inside that decision. We look at the deaths that defined Monza's reputation, every warning that was heard and ignored, every moment where something could have changed and didn't. There is one question underneath all of it. It is not complicated. When did the sport decide that enough people had died? The answer will take this entire video to explain. The Autodromo Nazionale di Monza opened in 1922, built in 110 days, designed around one principle: maximum speed. The circuit's layout was simple and brutal: long straights where cars ran flat out for minutes, corners designed not for technical challenge, but for carrying as much speed as possible into the next straight. No circuit in the world put drivers on the edge of what physics would allow more completely than Monza. And at the edge of the track, for decades, there was no gravel trap, no energy-absorbing foam, no wide asphalt runoff. There was a metal guardrail, and behind it, a concrete wall. A car losing control at Monza, at racing speed, had almost nowhere to go. Every engineer who studied the circuit understood this. What they disagreed about for the next 50 years was whose problem it was to solve. The first time Monza gave a clear warning, it gave it with 3 deaths in a single afternoon. During an earlier heat, a car leaked engine oil onto the surface of the south banking. Marshals arrived. They threw sand over the oil. They did not clean it. Giuseppe Campari was the most celebrated Italian racing driver of his generation. The crowd chanted his name when he walked to the grid. On lap 1 of the second heat, he entered the banking at full speed, hit the oil, and was dead before anyone reached him. Bacon and Borzacchini was directly behind him. He saw it happen. He tried to avoid it. He hit the same oil. He died in hospital in that evening. 2 of Italy's greatest drivers, same corner, same afternoon. The officials had a choice. They swept more sand over the blood and continued. In the final race, Stanislaw Tchaikovsky hit the same patch. His Bugatti caught fire in the ditch. He was trapped inside. The investigation that followed produced a report. The report produced recommendations. The race came back to Monza the following year. 28 years after Black Sunday, the sport had changed beyond recognition. The cars were 3 times faster. Television cameras were everywhere. The Italian Grand Prix was the jewel of the Formula One calendar. The Parabolica, the long sweeping right-hander that ends every lap, was still bordered by a low metal fence. Behind it, spectators stood, not behind a safety buffer, right behind the fence. September 10th, 1961. Wolfgang von Trips arrived at Monza, needing only to finish the race. He was leading the World Championship. He was 33 years old. He had already crashed at Monza in 1956 and again in 1958. He knew what this circuit demanded. He needed to be here. On the second lap, approaching the Parabolica at racing speed, his Ferrari made contact with Jim Clark's Lotus. The Ferrari launched into the air. It spun along the spectator fence. It disintegrated. Von Trips was thrown from the cockpit. 15 spectators died. 15 people standing behind a waist-high metal fence at the edge of a corner, doing 200 miles per hour. This time, the sport responded. New fencing was installed. The high-speed banking section was removed from the Formula One layout. The Italian Ministry of Tourism issued new circuit safety requirements. For the first time, a Monza disaster produced something more than a report. But the Parabolica's barrier, The barrier the car had flown along, the barrier with spectators standing behind it, was not redesigned, and the race came back. The following September, in the years after 1961, something shifted inside the sport. The drivers were no longer only talking to each other. Jackie Stewart had crashed at Spa in 1966, trapped in his car, soaked in fuel, for nearly 30 minutes before help arrived. It changed him. He spent the following years making the case, publicly and relentlessly, that the danger at circuits like Monza was not inevitable. It was a choice. The governing body and circuit owners pushed back. Traditionalists called him a coward. Newspapers called the campaign unnecessary. Stewart kept making it. In 1969, he organized a boycott of the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps, forcing the circuit to upgrade its barriers. It was the first time drivers had collectively refused to race until safety demands were met. It worked. That same year, Jochen Rindt, then one of the fastest drivers in the world and Stewart's close friend, published an open letter in the magazine Motorsport. The letter warned in detail about the instability that wings created on Formula One cars at high speed. The letter warned that Formula One was pushing speed faster than safety could keep up. It was published in May 1969, 16 months later. Rindt arrived at Monza as the dominant driver of the season. He had won 5 of the first 9 races. His championship lead was so large that even if he stopped scoring, his rivals would struggle to catch him. He only needed one more weekend. To save weight on Monza's long straights, his Lotus 72 ran without its aerodynamic wings. His teammate John Miles tested the same configuration and reported the car felt, in his words, horrifyingly unstable. Rindt went out anyway. Everything Jackie Stewart had been arguing, everything Rindt had warned about, was about to be tested at the fastest circuit on the calendar. Saturday, September 5th, 1970. During the final qualifying session, braking from full speed into the parabolica, the right front brake shaft on Rindt's Lotus 72 failed. The car veered left at over 200 miles per hour into the metal guardrail on the outside of the corner. On impact, a section of the barrier failed. Contemporary investigations and later accounts would focus heavily on the guardrail's construction and how it behaved during the crash. Rindt did not wear his crotch harness straps. He never wore them. He found them uncomfortable and preferred to be able to exit the car quickly in a fire. When the barrier gave way, he slid under the seatbelt. The buckle caused fatal injuries to his throat. He was pronounced dead on the way to hospital. At the end of the 1970 season, Jochen Rindt was declared Formula One World Champion. He is the only driver in history to win the title posthumously. 2 days after Rindt died, the FIA held a meeting at the request of the Italian Automobile Club. The meeting produced new safety measures to be implemented from the next round in Canada, not at Monza. From the next round, chicanes were added to Monza's circuit in 1972. The parabolica's guardrail was not fundamentally redesigned. The race came back to Monza in September 1971, and in 1972, and 1973, and 1974, and 1975, and 1976, and 1977. On the morning of September 10th, 1978, before the race had even started, Ronnie Peterson's car crashed during the warm-up session, brake failure. He walked away with a bruised leg and switched to his backup car. His teammate Mario Andretti walked over. "Bloody rear brakes again," Peterson said, "just like yesterday. You okay?" "Yes, just bruised." Peterson was the most naturally gifted driver many in the paddock had ever seen. He had come back to Lotus that season, running second to Andretti, trying to prove that the years of average results in mediocre cars had not diminished him. He was 34 years old. At the start of the race, the field accelerated toward the first chicane. The start was badly managed. Cars from the back rows were still moving. When the lights changed, the field bunched violently into the narrow chicane entry. Peterson's car was hit from behind. It went into the barriers. It caught fire. James Hunt and Clay Regazzoni stopped their cars and pulled Peterson free. They laid him on the track. He was conscious. He was talking. His legs were severely injured. He waited 20 minutes on the track surface for medical assistance to arrive. He was taken to the Niguarda Hospital in Milan by ambulance. He died that night. In the aftermath, Peterson's doctor, a Swedish physician named Peter Varolo, would say publicly what people inside the sport had been saying privately for years. If the accident had happened in Sweden, I don't think Ronnie would have died. He added something else. He'd been asked to sign a document agreeing not to speak publicly about the medical response at Monza. I realized it was useless to fight. It could have been a catastrophe for Italy. The scandal would have meant Formula One was finished in Italy. Peterson's death finally moved the people who could act. Bernie Ecclestone concluded that Professor Sid Watkins, the FIA's chief medical officer, needed direct authority over medical response at every circuit. Race starts were handed to official FIA starters to prevent another chaotic beginning. Circuits were required to provide medical vehicles and rapid response teams, driven by Watkins. With Ecclestone's backing, safety became, for the first time, a structural part of how Formula One operated. It had taken until 1978. It had taken Black Sunday. It had taken 15 spectators. It had taken the world champion. It had taken a driver left on the track, while questions about Monza's medical response became impossible to ignore. The asphalt runoff at the Parabolica was added in 2014, 81 years after Black Sunday, 44 years after Rindt, 36 years after Peterson. The solutions were not all the same, but the principle was, every generation knew the circuit needed more space, better barriers, and better protection for the people standing beside it. The question was never whether Monza could be made safer. The question was how many deaths it would take before safety became more important than tradition. The question this video began with was simple. When did the sport decide that enough people had died? Not in 1933, not in 1961, not in 1970, and not even in 1978. Because every change came after the next tragedy, and every tragedy arrived after the warning. Monza did not gain its reputation because the danger was invisible. The warnings were seen, the warnings were heard, but for decades, meaningful change arrived only after the next tragedy. Again and again, tomorrow arrived first. As you may have already noticed, this is still a relatively new and small channel. I put a lot of work into researching and writing every one of these videos, and I hope you found this one worthwhile. If you did, a like and a subscribe takes 2 seconds. For a channel at this stage, it means everything.